Meow meow. All right, Dobby, let's do this. All right, everyone. So, I feel like I should get one of those GoPro things to put on my head so I can be hands-free. I'm going to try to do this video while carrying a bucket of grain and letting out the chickens. I want to talk today from a homemaker's perspective about property taxes. That's the coop that I built in 2024 after my mother died. It took me about a month, and I'll talk more about it later. It's my scrap pile chicken coop. I'm very proud of it. And then that's the coop that we borrowed the design idea from a friend, and my housemate, Kike, built that about 8 years ago. Okay, onward. So, a homemaker's, hi girls, hi everyone, perspective on property taxes. Such a genius design. All right. Hi, girls. All right. Good morning. Buck, 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 buck. Sorry if that was a little loud. Okay, now you're going to watch me actually try to not trip. Eventually, the girls usually catch up with me, and I'm walking through a puddle of chickens trying not to step on them, like right now. Ha! Okay, homemaker's perspective on property taxes. This is part one. I've got the homemaker's perspective in general, and then I'm going to have the homemaker going through a divorce perspective, and then I'm going to have the homemaker as a homeschooler perspective. So, let's see here. Property taxes. There's this thing where people get something is a part of the world, you're used to it, it's the way you live, and you have a natural inclination to just assume it's going to continue to be that way. And so we sort of accept the reality we're born into. And for a while now, property taxes, there you go guys, have been really a tool. Let's look at it that way. It's an economic tool that's used. There you go, girls. Good morning. Good breakfast. Okay, so property taxes are an economic tool that we use as a society to fund certain projects. Not everyone knows this, so I'll just sort of mention it, that like property taxes are earmarked for specific expenses. A lot of times let's just walk the trails. A lot of times your school may depend for its funding. Oh, it's very wet. My shoes are getting wet. On property taxes. And where I live, the fire department, the local park district, we now have a health district, and the schools. I'm pretty sure all of those come from property taxes, which is why there's a big community debate about whether to build, a new high school. The first new high school they wanted to build on Vashon was going to have, I think, $150 million budget. And the island actually said no. We had a high school, and yeah, we wanted a new one, but this was excessive. So they came back and they tried again. And the second time around, oh, mom and babies need some food too. The second time around, they asked for $75 million, and the island approved it. But there are issues with property taxes. And I'm going to highlight one in particular right now. And that is that if you want to do property taxes, if you want to use that as a tool, well, fine. By the way, look at that. I cleaned the buckets yesterday, or the day, no, I think it was the day before yesterday. So it's like Easter. Easter eggs, plastic buckets as Easter eggs. Okay. Ooh, pollen in the air. So, back to property taxes. The tool is not a bad one. Hey, Dobby, we're getting food for the babies. The property tax idea Totally can work. The problem, as I see it, is not that you're using the tool of property taxes. It's how you assess the value of the home. I'll be right back, Dobby. Which then correlates with the amount of taxes that the person has to pay. Currently where I live, and I'm sure it's different from state to state. So where I live here on Vashon Island in King County of Washington State, property taxes are based upon, a state assessment, and that state assessment takes into account really what the real estate market has done to your property value. So if you moved here 40 years ago and you bought your property at $150,000, and over the next 40 years, you invested a ton of money and energy and effort into maintaining your property, expanding your property, developing your property, maybe even adding on to the house, right? You've invested your money that could have been spent in the stock market. It could have been put into other money-making investments. You've decided to invest it in your house. Now that has a direct value for you because your day-to-day living experience is improved. But it's essentially an economic loss. You have lost money that could have been invested elsewhere into money-making ventures. You have instead, hello, Mr. Rooster, placed it into a non-money-making venture, which is your day-to-day lifestyle and home. Now, that's fine. That's a choice you can make. The problem is that if you have improved and beautified your property, the state comes along, they peek over your fence, they walk down your driveway, they check with the local real estate agent who's going to say, oh, and by the way, now more people want to live here. So because of market demand, we could sell that property that was bought for $150,000 40 years ago. We could sell it for $800,000 today. And then the state says, oh, that's really good to know. We're going to go ahead and say that the property is worth $750,000. Okay, the property is worth that if you find someone who's willing to pay you that money for the property, and if you decide you want to sell, pack up all your things, and go live somewhere else. Packing up all your things and going to live somewhere else is actually a cost to you. You're going to now be paying money in rent, or if you've paid off your house, you go from a home that you own to now not owning a home and having to spend money every minute of every day to live somewhere in someone else's home. So the idea that when you sell your house and you cash out, boom, you've just made a bunch of profit. Okay, first of all, it requires you to cash out. Secondly, that profit comes with a price, which is now you're back to being a renter, or you have to go buy another property and you get a new mortgage. So it's like the stock market. Just because the stock market's going up, if you haven't sold your stock, you haven't realized any gains. This property that I've been working on for 20 years has mostly been landscaping work. I have maintained the house. I painted that house by hand myself the year after my mother died, the same time that I built that chicken coop. But other than that, we haven't added on. Most of the value increase in this property comes from two things. One, the land, which I've sunk a lot of money and who knows how much money's worth of my time and energy into. And the fact that a lot of people want to live here now. So that's the problem right there. If you're going to tax me based upon what the property would be worth, if I were to sell it to random strangers, robbing myself of its value, and putting me back into the disempowered position of now being a renter or the paying interest to a bank mortgage holder position. How does that make sense? And what it happens is people end up putting all their money into their property. They pay for it. They're like, I've achieved the American dream. I own my home. And then they start getting charged property taxes based upon the home's estimated value. And if you're in a community where people are like, hey, we want a lot more services, and those services are paid for with property taxes, you get two effects that raise the taxes. So currently, I'm on a program that preserves all this land. It's a government program. I agree not to develop it. I'm not going to go out there and throw down a concrete pad and, build a fun playhouse or something. It preserves the land because that way, when the rain falls on it, it's going to move through the earth in a better fashion, and you get benefits to the local pond, and there's all these environmental benefits, right? As a result, I get a break on about 40% of my taxes. Every month, I pay the state of Washington $800 in property taxes. $800 a month is my forever rent. It's my cost, it's my beginning base cost of living to be on a property that I supposedly own free and clear. Well, technically my husband and I own it right now. So what happens? What's the effect of this? The effect that we see is that the older generation, the people who have the wisdom, the historical knowledge, the experience, the ones who can sit there on a front porch and chat with you about how you as a newcomer to the island can manage this or that issue that's coming up because you just came from the suburbs and you're clueless, or the grandparents who would be able to provide great value to the community by having their grandchildren come and spend the summer with them. So mom and dad who are at their working age, can go out there and generate income. So all of the glue that our retirement community provides that holds society together, well, we lose that because when you're on a fixed income and your property taxes continue to go up because you are unlucky enough to live somewhere where a lot of other people want to live, and your region is being flooded by people who are fleeing California, for example, now you're being forced out of your home because you can't afford to live there due largely to skyrocketing property taxes. And right now in the state of Washington, which is dominated by the Democratic Party, which has no interest in any type of cooperative relationship with non-Democrats in the state. They don't work with Republicans. They don't cooperate with Republicans. They're like bulls in a china shop doing whatever they want to do. They are currently trying to push there's like a cap on property tax increases, and they want to expand it by like triplicate or something. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but here we are, a state where a lot of people want to be here and they want to buy houses. And how are you going to get houses for all those rich people who want to come up here and bring their money into the state? Well, you're going to watch your senior citizens selling the homes that they've dedicated their lives to, partly because skyrocketing property taxes are going to make it too hard for them to live, especially during a time of inflation in every other area. So, as a homemaker, my view on this, my idea, is that what we need to do is use the property tax tool, but we need to reduce our use of it. Everyone, when they buy a home, should be locked in at paying the property taxes that go along with that value of the home. So you buy a home for $500,000, then you will be taxed as if your home is worth $500,000 for the rest of your life. And when you sell that home because you want to, and not because you're being priced out of your own home, When you sell it because you want to, that person who buys it for $800,000, they are locked in paying property taxes at the $800,000 mark until 20, 30, 40 years later, they might decide to sell it. So I bought this property with my husband for $380,000. I would be happy to pay property taxes on $380,000 worth of value. But while living here, I have watched the property in the first 2 years, it skyrocketed from $380,000, which we paid for it, up to a real estate market value of $650,000. That was in 2 years because it was the big bubble leading up to the 2008 collapse. And my husband and I actually talked about whether we wanted to sell the property, pocket the, $250,000 that we would keep, and then sit around for a year or two until the bubble burst. And then there's the old burn pile. And then go back and buy some other property somewhere else. And we decided no, because this is the land we want to live on. We didn't want to play that game because we were connected to this land, this home, this location, this earth, these trees. This is where we wanted to be. And so that's my suggestion for property taxes. Oh, and by the way, if the value of the property drops below what you purchased it at, I think property taxes should follow that valuation downward and back up again, but they're capped. So once the real estate market and the state thinks your property goes back up again to $500,000, if that's what you bought it at, that's where the property taxes stop. And then if the state says, oh, guess what? We got a bunch of people who will pay $5 million to buy your house. Okay, that's great. In your imagination land, you can come up with someone who's going to come give me $5 million for my house. Yay. But guess what? I don't want to move. There's my cat. This is my cat's home. Here's my other kitty. Where is he? He was just under my feet. My kitties live here. This is their home. I don't buy houses because I want to sell them 5 years later and make money. I bought this home so I could raise my children here and create an ark that would provide sustenance and the capacity to survive through the next generation as the world goes through really hard times. This property can provide at least 50% of the food that 6 people would need to survive on. And it provides enough wood to keep the house warm if you can't afford your propane. And we have a wood-burning stove that you can cook with if you can't, afford the propane for that. So we can have our own eggs. We can raise our own chicken meat. So I don't want to flip the house and go buy another one. I'm not here like a stock market person to make money. This is actually my home. And when the state forces your home to be viewed as a commodity, that's not good for society. That is the government harming the social fabric and damaging the glue that government social programs cannot replace. It's not like you're going to be like, hey, guess what? Hire a grandma, because all the grandparents have had to downsize and move to apartments in, nearby suburbs. So if you need a grandma, we've got a social program. We'll rent you a grandma. That's ridiculous. What we need is the actual grandparents who have lived here and raised their kids here to still be on their property because they're not being taxed out of it by exploiting property taxes. And by the way, if I didn't have that special program, currently I'd be paying about $1,200 a month to the government for permission to live here on the land that I've paid for in full. How is that the American dream? So property taxes really do have an erosionary effect on this idea that we have of the American dream of owning your own property. Anyways, this is our home, and I'm willing to pay property taxes on $380,000, which is what I paid to buy it, which is the market value that it had in real concrete dollars, not this up and down real estate market, which operates like the stock market, because I haven't realized any gains until I sell the property, and I don't want to. Okay, I'm starting to repeat myself. Ha! All right, there's my kitties. I really, really hope I get to keep the property when I go through the divorce, because I don't know how I could find another home for these kitties that would be anywhere close to the one that they have been brought into. They're siblings, by the way. They're about a year and a half, and we same mom. They've been together their whole life, and they really love it here. Bye, everyone.